Hello, leaders. Can we be honest tonight? Some of the biggest moments of leadership don't actually arrive when we feel prepared. They actually arrive when the pressure is high, the systems are shaky, and the stakes are real. And in those moments, many of us are waiting for confidence to show up or before we actually make that move. But what if leadership doesn't work that way? I know. Hold on. What if confidence is not the requirement, but courage is? Because when we talk about this year, in the flip side of adversity, we are committing this series to supporting leaders who are navigating uncertainty, change, exhaustion, and even reinvention. And tonight's conversation speaks directly to that reality. What do you do when the organization is struggling, the expectations are heavy, and life itself is demanding everything from you? You become the leader the moment actually requires, not because you have all of the answers, but because you're willing to move anyway. So tonight, this is about courage before confidence. And leaders, that may be the exact shift this season is asking of you. So stay tuned. What's making strong leaders in this season? Leadership is influence. It's rooted in the responsibility you take. You pay attention to the patterns, your calm, your strength, your hope. It's all integrated. We are living in a time where trust is fragile and people are watching not just what leaders say, but how they decide. Integrity is not optional anymore. Obedience is going to cost you. In this season, we're not just flipping adversity, we're forming leaders who can carry what comes next. Leaders from across all dimensions of fields and spaces, they're going to come together to give you the best of their wisdom. And I want you to leave each episode with a call to action. That's the work, that's the calling, and that's the conversation we're stepping into together. Welcome to the flip side of adversity. I am Dr. Veirdre Jackson, the CEO and creative behind Living Strong Consulting. I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation because I know if you are a leader who is carrying weight that has you in a place of feeling stuck, this is the conversation for you because it is not going to be the season where everything is feeling in order, and it is going to require your courageous moves. And this woman lives and exemplifies this message in not only how she is as a person, but who she is as a leader and all the things that she has accomplished. I've only known her for a short time, but sometimes there's those relationships where you immediately know, there's something there. And I'm excited that we have an opportunity to be connected. So I've given you a little bit of a runway. Now let me tell you a little bit about her. Marissa Christie is the president and CEO of United Way of Bucks County and a nationally recognized nonprofit leader known for transforming organizations and reimagining how communities access support and resources. Under her leadership, United Way of Bucks County has grown revenue by more than 160%, expanding services to over 15,000 neighbors annually, and launched innovative models like the Help Center and a new 20,000 square foot community hub. She is a respected coach and strategist, and Marissa equips leaders across the U.S. and internationally to lead with courage, sustainability, and bold vision in times of uncertainty. So you can just tell from her bio why I asked her to have this conversation with us. So join me in welcoming to the flip side, Marissa Christie. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I so appreciate your yes, as I admire, and literally I could just pull 3 sentences from your bio. We could have kept going. And as we lean into this commitment that I've made in all of 2026 to speak into the heart and soul of leaders who are exhausted, who are probably wrestling with doubt as uncertainty and fear literally becomes our daily meal, especially in the nonprofit world. You actually stepped into leadership during a season of instability while you were also preparing to become a mother again. So can you give us a snapshot? What was on your mind as you were stepping into that CEO role?
When you say that, I can feel that moment again. I can feel that moment again. Do you remember years ago, there was a show called 24? Do you remember that at all?
Yes, I do.
And the premise here is that it's happening in real time, and there was always a countdown clock somewhere in your field of vision as a viewer. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was watching all of these countdown clocks all at the same time. I was watching a countdown clock to the birth of my second child. When I was offered the opportunity, I was about 4 weeks away from my due date. So we're on a countdown. I had a child at home who was 2.5 years old. And that always feels immediate and urgent, I think, because, children are rapidly developing and, so many things are changing. So you have this, almost like a countdown of childhood saying, I want to be there for every single one of those precious moments. But at work, there was also this big countdown. We'd been through a lot of leadership changes in a very short period of time. Financially, we were struggling. We were losing relevancy, we were losing impact, we were losing revenue. And being completely candid, not only did it not feel like the right moment, I did not feel like the right leader.
Yes. That statement has come up so many times, and it is so authentic, but also surprising at the same time, because many of, especially women who have sat in that chair, who have accomplished so many things, they can point back to an imposter syndrome moment. When you think of how to move through that perception that I might not be the right one for this, or I don't have enough for this. What advice did you give yourself, and what would you tell to another leader?
I think there were sort of 2 things that were running concurrently. And the first is I did solicit advice from trusted voices in my orbit, from my husband, friends and family, from my colleagues, from my parents. And there were a couple of things. I think first is some advice that my father gave me at the time. And he was a longtime pastor, since retired. But, that gives you, I think, unique insights into how organizations run, how nonprofits run. And he asked me to consider, I thought, a tough question at the time. And the question was not, can you do this? The question was, if you put everything into this, if you put your heart and soul into this, and you're not sure that this situation can be changed, would you have the courage to step away? And that could mean a couple of different things. That would mean, would I have the courage to step away and say, maybe it's not me? Maybe this is not for me? Would I have the courage to go back to the board of directors and say, this may not work in this geography, in this footprint. Maybe we can't turn this ship around fast enough, and we need to look at perhaps a merger or repositioning. Would I have the courage to go back and say that? And that's tough, because that means that's taken a lot of potential hits to our ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to wrestle with that and get straight on whether or not I would have the courage to say that. Or would my ego, feel too embarrassed? I think that was part of it. But the other thing I had to really get comfortable with is the idea, I think, that just because we may not feel qualified in the moment doesn't mean we are incapable. We may not be qualified, but that doesn't mean we can't get there.
Yes.
And it's almost like in those moments, we want to say, I am not qualified, period. But should it be a period, Veirdre?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a period.
It's
It's a comma. I'm not qualified to do this yet. That's our growth mindset. And that's what's so important to embrace, even when it's scary, even when we're worried, even when we're not ready for the challenge. We don't put a period where God or the universe or life is telling you it's okay to put a comma. It's okay to seek additional opportunity and preparation.
I love the vulnerability of recognizing that the cost of what may be necessary in order to change or create a shift or pivot, being willing to recognize that the cost and the outcome are more important than my ego. Because sometimes, again, most of my guests, not all of them, many of my guests are women who sit in that chair, that identity becomes connected to the reputation or the title. And so recognizing when to say, I might not be the one, and that doesn't mean you're a failure. You have to be willing to recognize, okay, I might not be the one for this, but this is so important, it must go on without me, so I have to step out of the way. That is powerful, drenched with integrity, as well as a leadership opportunity that I don't know if everyone is brave enough to do, because sometimes we stay so wedded to the title, the reputation, the office. When we are in those places, what did you learn about yourself in that struggle? Because clearly, you're still here. You're still here. And not just here, you are doing abundant things. What did you learn about yourself in that struggle? Yourself, your leadership, what did you learn?
It's a great question. And I think I learned a few things. And chief among them is the importance of being wedded to mission, to being aligned with mission, and as much as this is going to be counterintuitive, but not with organization. So, if everything we're doing is in service of keeping our organization afloat, when we are truly in survival mode, and we can't do anything but try to figure out how we're going to feed our family. And I'm, using that as the metaphor for all of those folks that we employ, all of those folks that are counting on us, then we lose sight of what we're actually there to do. The nonprofit sector is a little different. I have a very special, as I see it, and sacred responsibility, which is I am holding this organization in trust for my community. It's not mine forever. I'm a temporary caretaker. And that's an important piece of it. And when you reframe this around it, and I think what you said is right on, but very tough. It may not be you, but are you going to do enough to get things to the next chapter where someone else is going to pick up the baton and keep it moving forward? So I think really reframing it, always mission first, always stakeholder first. If I'm not every single day thinking about who am I here to serve and what am I here to do, I'm not doing my job. At that point, I think I am like running a small, expensive club for 16 employees. And that's not it.
Mm-mm.
That's not the job. The job is not this. It's not just this. That piece is important, and that takes work, and that takes a lot of strategic oversight. It takes a lot of, paying attention to our finance, all of those things. Absolutely. But mission first, stakeholders first, what's in the best interest of community, and is that our driving force? And if it is, we're probably still in the right seat. When it stops being that, that's the time we have to step back, do a little self-assessment, a little self-actualization, and ask, okay, so is this still for me? Is this still the right fit?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is, as you move through that, your core values or alignment, you were able to continue to self-assess, hold yourself accountable to the mission, and making sure that as a leader, you weren't moving or making those decisions out of survival mode, but instead from an integrity place.
I think that's necessary because when we're in survival mode, we are making a lot of rapid decisions out of fear, and we are not making our best decisions consistently. This is going to, it's going to sound a little silly, but at the time, and most folks don't know this, but at the time I got a little gold yellow ring to put around the edge of my key to the building, to our admin offices. And I did that as a reminder, and I still look at it every time I go in, that if there is a day that I go and I put that key in that lock, this yellow sunny little sunny key, and it no longer sparks joy, if I have a day where it's not for me, that's a sign. That's time for me to kind of step back. But I think that all of those things are right. And it's funny too, because we can see it. We know it in the consumers we serve. We can see it in our work colleagues, but sometimes we miss that in ourselves, and we think we're okay, I'm doing fine. And then you look down and you see white knuckles and you're like, no, you're not fine. You're struggling. So what do we need to do? Right?
Yes. So I want to lean into that concept and almost become a little bit more laser focused in what if it isn't necessarily that the change is not about you shifting, but your plan of doing a shift or change incrementally in small chunks, or we'll just tweak this. But as a leader, you said, okay, I'm in this, and we'll just start tweaking these things. But you come to a point, you're like, these tweaks are not going to work. We actually need to do something big, something like rethinking the entire model. How do leaders know when they need to stop tweaking it and actually shift the model?
That's that's a great connection, because I think the survival mode thing it's going to tell that story. So when you are dealing with major structural flaws, rather. When you have something really wrong, little incremental shifts are not going to solve that. That's us saying, I am sitting in a boat in the ocean. The boat is sinking. Quick, everyone get a cup. And we're going to bail it out. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. That's what survival mode looks like. Survival mode looks like folks are going to sit in this boat and we're going to keep dumping water over the side. We're going to try to keep afloat as long as we can. And we're not going to seek another path, another opportunity, an alternative. And that's only buying you time. And it's not buying you time, I think, in a way, again, that's going to meet the mission. I don't think it's going to buy you time in a way that keeps your team intact.
I was thinking the same
right?
thing.
Because everybody's
damage.
Everybody's arms are tired. And everyone's going to look at you and be like, when do we stop? When is enough? When is this ship no longer going to be sinking? So that's the point at which you have to say, this isn't going to work for us. This doesn't work for our team. And that's really, I think, how I felt at the time, is that we had to stop trying to just make these little changes to existing systems. And that's tough because, whether or not everybody knows what a United Way does, I think there is still some familiarity with the brand name. It's a legacy nonprofit. It's got certain preconceptions. It's got some standardization in terms of operating models. I mean, that's changing now. But to be among the first to step out and say, this may work in some communities, this is not working in our community. So we are going to need to get out of the boat.
Wow.
We're going to have to get into a completely different boat and go a new direction. And that was part of it. And that's scary too. And not everyone was ready to get into the other boat. And I say that, with a great deal of affection, just like it's okay as a nonprofit staff leader to say, this may not be for me. Sometimes for board members, it's not for them. Sometimes for staff, it's also not for them. And that's okay. We can part as friends. But my job in keeping this mission moving forward is to get folks in the right boat and get us all rowing in the same, actually rowing, right? Not bailing, not sitting, not sinking, but we need to be in a seaworthy vessel. We need to keep rowing in the same direction and bring other folks with us.
There's something so significant about a key element that you just shared that I think sometimes nonprofits and for-profits miss the mark on, because we as an organization have a reputation, we are known for this, or this is what people recognize us for. Remain wedded to the image or the way it's always been done, and sacrifice the fact that we are actually here for people. And we'll stay committed to, we've always done, and lose sight of, yes, but our real mission are the people. And so when you are in that place of really communicating that this is actually about the people, how as a leader what are some key, maybe 3 things that you had to strengthen as a leader in order to really drill home that this is about people, not just the organization?
I'll give you 3 things, but first I want to double click so hard and underline in bold what you just said, because I want us to think about for a second what happens when we protect systems and we protect institutions instead of protecting people. Think about every time we've seen that happen. It's ugly. It's ugly. And so we, even on these small things, we can't be complicit in a system that puts institutions ahead of people.
Oh,
It's not for us.
did you just say we cannot be complicit? I want someone to hear, like, have them really sit with that, because as you shared in the title of this conversation, that as leaders, what people need are courageous human beings who are willing to do the right thing, even when other people would prefer for it to stay comfortable. Oh,
That is, and that's the truth.
mm-hmm.
It makes people uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what we have to do. I think that for me, the three things we had to do, and some of them are a little more technical than others, but first, we had to stop talking and start listening. That was a really important piece. And what we started saying over and over again to each other in our office is we are nothing about us without us. So no matter what consumer we are there to serve, we are not embarking on any new program, on any new outreach. We're not doing any of that until we've gotten consumer feedback. And we are going to build our work not around what we think people need, not what we're telling people they need. We are going to build everything around what folks tell us they need. We had to get real about our operating costs. We had to fully understand them because there's my job is about people, but it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business
Mm-hmm.
that occupies a certain space in the tax code.
Yes.
But it's nonetheless a business. So had to understand our true operating costs, and we're still working on that, quite honestly. There's still, we still have work to do to really get super crystal clear on all of those pieces. That's really an important piece of what we're doing. And I think we had to also really be specific about the spaces that were best for us. What are we really great at? What are we okay at? Where are other people working? Where should we be cheering from the sidelines? And where should we be leading the charge? And that's a different way to look at things too, is to be willing to let go of things, of programs, even when we love them, even when they're meaningful, but to say, this is something we love. This is something in some cases that is still profitable, but it's pulling us away from something that is potentially even more important, that's something a little bigger. And so in addition to those pieces, we really started going through and saying each year, everything we do, is this a stop? Is this a start? Is this a less? Or is this a more? Stop, start, less, more. And continue to refine and winnow things down. And I know you only said 3, but I'm going to throw one more in there.
Yes.
I'm going to throw one more in, and I'm going to make a case here for being willing to do things and go big, even if we are not certain they are going to succeed. And that's very difficult. And I think that's really stifling in the nonprofit sector. I think a lot of times the reason for those incremental changes is this awareness that, first of all, we are working with other people's generosity. We want to do the best for our donors, and I understand that. But in some cases, I think we'd rather do really small things well than take really big swings and not know if we're going to connect every single time. And we've had some programs that we've tested that, we did what we needed to do. We got consumer feedback. We built the right model. We created a theory of change. We did and they were not as successful as I would have liked. But does that mean you stop trying to innovate? Because no business on earth would ever, no business that plans to remain in business is going to look at you and say, no, I'm not going to change. I said steam engine, I'm sticking with steam engine. No, that's not how it goes. Progress happens. We have to keep up with that. And that requires rethinking our models. So I think it was sort of all of those things.
Yeah.
That's probably like 4.5 different
Yeah.
things we needed to do concurrently.
I'm here
But
for
that
all
was
of it,
that was
though.
it. That was it.
Yeah.
It was doing all of those things at the same time.
Yes. There is something within what you said, somewhere around maybe 3.5, 4, somewhere right around in there. But I think about, regardless of size of organization, sometimes we stay so wedded to something that makes us feel good, so we keep doing it, but it's not actually what anybody else wants, or we have always done it for the past 15 years, and so we can't stop that. But then the services, regardless if you are for-profit, nonprofit, small, big, the services become so diluted because you are stretched so thin. But your process of asking, I think it was 4, is it stop,
start, less, more. And we cannot do everything to the same level every year and scale.
Yes.
Right? So if everything remains flat, we're doing the same thing every single year, nothing changes.
Yes.
And what that means is nothing changes for the folks we serve. Nothing changes for our consumers. And so to really go through, and we do this as a team, we really look at these things together. And there are things, I love what you said. There are things we had to let go entirely. There are things that we've had to scale down because there are some places we were working, and I say this with love, but they were some of the easier solutions. And they feel good, they look good, they mean well, but they don't require our level of expertise to execute on. So we don't need to put all of our energy into things that in some cases, volunteer groups, community associate, I mean, there are other folks, if there are other folks working on this who can address this need, it's okay to say, all right, then we're going to do less. And if this is no longer a need, then we're going to stop.
Yes.
And that's tough.
In order to scale, that's key, right? Because if we're going to, especially in uncertain, shaky, exhausting times, if I'm trying to do everything at the same level of capacity and I want to remain relevant, that's a formula for burnout in my mind. And so as I listen to you, I'm hoping some leaders are sitting with those 4 elements, because that refinement, as I'm listening, and I might be wrong, but what I heard is that refinement then allowed you to have access to capacity to think bigger. Because if we're constantly trying to do everything at the same level, you're literally taking the cognitive overload and taking up space that is preventing you from thinking bigger, from dreaming bigger, and from scaling in a time when people need us to be crystal clear in what we do well and how we're going to stay relevant. Oh, it's so great. So you mentioned out of your 4.5, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with all of them because they were amazing. When within there, you shared really assessing your operations. And sometimes people, even when they're running nonprofits, they are scared to look at the revenue, to look at the bottom line. Let's just keep moving forward. And so you've grown in the impact as well as the revenue. I shared your numbers significantly. What mindset shifts actually helped you move from a scarcity mindset to actually possibility thinking?
I think there are a few things. I'll say on a personal level, I had a lot of growing to do, and I had to do it pretty quickly, I felt, to meet the moment. We mentioned before, I had this opportunity. I had a baby coming in a couple weeks. I had a little guy at home. Am I ready to be CEO? I'm not sure. But the best thing I can do right at this moment is enroll in graduate school, which is what I did. So when my daughter was about 6 months old, I said, in addition to these things, I'm going to go get my master's degree in nonprofit leadership at LaSalle, and I am going to focus on understanding everything I need to know, in part because this was my first foray into the nonprofit sector. I'd never worked in nonprofits before. So I came from a corporate setting. There's a lot that translates, but not everything does. So I felt like I needed to get up to speed very quickly. What I found was that speaking directly to our consumers and speaking directly to my colleagues and gathering that information was a huge help in setting a bigger vision and thinking bigger. And I had a donor say to me, and this couple are now our most generous major donors, and he said, we're not investing in the tactical, we're investing in the vision.
Yes.
We trust you.
Ooh.
We trust you to do this, to implement. But what we want to know is, where are we going? What's the vision? What's the where can we land if we're all moving in the same direction? And I think that is a strange mental shift, but I think that I went from thinking sometimes that I didn't want to ask folks for too much to thinking I am going to share with folks what we need and hope that the folks who share our perspective and believe in the new model that we were building would understand why and would see it as being worthy of investment. And I think that the idea that you noted there, the idea of a scarcity mindset, is really crippling to nonprofits. It's very difficult. Is that we are of the opinion that we're all at imminent risk of running out of money, right?
Yes,
and we are all
that's
in direct competition, and it's and that's damaging. It's a damaging belief. There are beautiful opportunities everywhere. We may not achieve them always as quickly as we prefer. I am the kind of person who, when we're going to go, I'm like, I want to go. I want to go. I want this. I am so grateful for where we're going in 2026. I would have loved to have been there in 2024, but it wasn't the time yet. This is the time. But that, I think all of those things is getting clear on. One of the interesting things too, and again, my dad always said this too, which I always thought was interesting, a different perspective, is he said he didn't do a ton of fundraising or solicitation. Again, he's a pastor, and we need our congregations to give generously. But what he would do is he would walk people through and talk about what would be possible if. And he said, you don't need to ask. You don't need to be quite that direct. It doesn't need, you never want to feel like you're twisting someone's arm, but you want to connect them to the opportunity to change the world in a meaningful way, to connect folks with the opportunity to literally to open doors and change someone's life. And that's what I'm offering, and that's what we're selling. And it's not an arm twisting exercise. And it's not because like, oh my gosh, it's because this change could be a beautiful thing.
Yes. And when you are scaling and you're casting vision that creates significant impact because you have collected information from the voices of the people you are serving, and you're not in a survival brain, so you really can communicate how big this could be. And you are inviting a donor, supporter, you have the invitation to be a part of how big this could be. And you can speak from that place because you are not trying to do 50 other things
right
at the same time.
And that's Nobody is going to do all of those things well. I am not trying to drive in my car while putting in my contacts and changing my shoes. Like that is
You will get into an
ill-advised.
accident. You will crash.
It will not be a sustainable car ride. It will not be. But no, I think that's exactly right. And I also think that being clear on those vision pieces, it's important because it also impacts the way we engage and interact, not just with our donors, but with our consumers. And that's an important part too.
Yeah.
For me, one of the most important things that we do as humans and as a nonprofit organization, as an ambassador for everything we want to, all the change we want to affect in the world, is to greet every single person with dignity and respect. And when they walk in through that door, whether they are there because they are eager to write us a $50,000 check or because they slept in their car for the first time last night and they didn't know where else to go, that greeting should look, sound, and feel exactly the same. I'm happy you're here. Welcome, come on in. How can I help? And that's it. It's a human-centered, person-first. We have a lot of folks in our orbit who have not been treated well by systems that were intended to serve them. And that creates a different expectation when you enter spaces. And if we're really going to be helpful to folks, the first thing we have to do is show up consistently with empathy and in a way that, I think folks know, right? You get it. You get a feeling when you walk into it, no matter what people, thank you for, no matter what that tight feeling that you can sometimes get in a place where someone's kind of smiling at you, but you the smile doesn't go all the way up to their eyes. No, it's got to be warm, genuine, sincere. We're happy you're here. How can we help? And that is also part of the vision that we're selling. It's not just the program. It's not just the impact and outcomes. It is the model through which service is delivered. I don't think it should be unique in the nonprofit space, but I also want to acknowledge that it can be difficult, especially for our frontline employees, because a lot of times in our sector, our frontline employees, it's a very thin line between who is standing there seeking help and who's standing there offering it.
Yes.
And when we're in that kind of tense, it is really hard to show up for folks with that warmth and sort of generosity of spirit and coming from that place.
And that survival mindset of a leader will infiltrate throughout an entire organization and a team, and it will inevitably become a contagion to the very person who you want to be the greeter. And because the leader has not cultivated the capacity at that level, it cannot show up in the people. I tell people oftentimes that a dysregulated leader cannot lead or expect to see regulation in a dysregulated team. It's just not going to show up because you can't give what you don't have, and what you have becomes a contagion, especially when you're a leader. And so that everything that you have walked us through up to this moment creates this backdrop for, as you lead with such a place of integrity and passion and holding dignity for others at the center of service. And something else that you said that I actually just had a conversation with a team, in that when human beings have been impacted by a marginalized system, they hold that memory of that experience with the system, even if the people change. So coming into a space, you're going to have to change their narrative about the system. So when they come into the space, it is completely different. And they will know, because their emotional memory to what that system gave them, if the eyes and the smile, and if it's plastic, they will know it. So that authenticity from leadership all the way to the front line is necessary if we're talking about dignity. And I have watched you light up talking about this new facility. So I want, look, see, you all saw the same thing. When she talks about this facility, her whole being radiates joy and excitement. So I want you to help leaders hear how you can go from shaky, pouring the water out with the cup, to truly a scaled dream. Tell us about the facility and what's so important about it for you as a leader.
I didn't know I did that, but now that you're
immediately,
now that you're saying it, yeah, that feels right. Well, so this, real quick snapshot. One of the opportunities that we saw was to collaborate better with corporate partners who have products that they do not want to see go to waste. But they also, as businesses, may not have the capacity to say, how do I get 2 full tractor trailer loads of oral hygiene products distributed throughout a region? They don't, this is not their model. This is not what they're set up to do. So we came up with an idea, this thing called the Help Center, a healthy eating and living partnership. And the premise is pretty simple. It is both a broad distribution network and also a shop where consumers can come in and shop for what they need for their families with dignity, with the dignity of choice, with everything being brand new, everything being free of charge, and everything being high quality. So we don't carry things that we wouldn't want in our own homes. And that, to me, is the threshold. That's the bar you have to meet. So what we found is that this creates an environment that immediately lets folks know we are here for you and we're here to help. Now, we may not be able to do everything for you today, but we can help. We can help with some of the basics. And then we want to start working with you to make sure you have all the other things that you need. So this new vision, we have an existing help center. We actually have 2 separate leased spaces. We were planning to open the help center. Our goal was by the middle of 2020. Now, 2020, you may remember, got off to
Veirdre,
it got off to a rocky start. If I'm going to be honest, it could have been better.
Yes.
But my trusted board approved putting our foot on the gas instead of the brakes. And so instead of saying we're going to delay because we don't know how this is going to go, we said we're going to accelerate because we're not sure how this is going to go. So I signed a lease on March 31st, 2020. We opened in April. Our first big delivery from a corporate partner was toilet paper. It was Charmin. It was Kimberly Scott. Yeah, it was, and it was the reason we had to get security on the building. If I'm gonna again keep it, yeah, it was huge. So we had that to distribute immediately. We Colgate Palmolive were very generous. We started working with scaling up our relationships with Walmart, we have great partnership with Amazon, with another nonprofit called Good 360. So we have all of these product lines that come in, again, really good quality things. What we found at the existing help center is that because we could build these really trusting relationships and could nurture them over time, could really become community for folks who sometimes need community. Sometimes people don't come into the help center because they need something. Sometimes they come in because they need to share something.
Yes.
Sometimes it is that a grandma who's the primary caregiver for her grandchildren needs to talk to an adult for a couple hours. You know, she needs a little connection, or
Mhm.
sometimes folks need someone to celebrate with them because of where they've landed in their sobriety journey. And if you don't have that network, that social capital, this is a place where you get to know folks, and that means a lot to me. But what the new site allows us to do is a few things. First is, when you walk in, the actual shop itself is right in the very center. It's in the heart of the building, and everything else wraps around it. That is a bit of a heavy-handed metaphor, but it comes from it is the heart. Everything that happens there is the heart of what we do. Service is the very center. But for the first time, our entire team will be in the same location. We're going to be able to expand what we're doing with our partners, because this isn't just about, this is what United Way is doing at the Help Center. We have partners come in. Legal aid comes in. Our mental health partners come in. Our Workforce on Wheels Career Link camper comes there.
Wow.
So sometimes, and I think you put it so beautifully, like, even if the people change, if the system did not serve you, you don't trust the system. But maybe if we've gotten to know each other like that, and I say to you, Veirdre, I really think you're going to like this. I think just check it out. See if it, try it on, see if it fits. And through those changes, we've seen so many just things that feel like miracles, things, a mom who came back, she'd come the first couple times for some support, for some home goods, for some diapers, for some hygiene products. But ultimately, she came to the Workforce on Wheels, which is a wonderful project in Bucks County. And that day she got her first job with full benefits.
Oh.
She'd always worked between 2 and 3 part-time jobs, and again, constantly in survival mode. What does it look like, though, for her now as a parent? And those are the moments I live for, is when somebody comes back in and we get to celebrate with them. And it's such a special thing. I love the concept. I love the construct. But the space we are currently occupying does not rise up to meet people. It does not show them how special and important we believe they are. It looks like a mess. It looks like, and my colleagues, the folks, they do beautiful displays. Our volunteers are incredible. There's about 700 volunteers who work with us, believe it or not. And they're doing their best, but the physical space isn't right. And there is something to be said for having the right space around us. It impacts, I think, how we think, feel, see ourselves, how worthy we see ourselves as being. And I know you know that because you care about the space you're in.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it becomes, as I'm listening to you and everything you've said leading up to this moment, it literally becomes an ecosystem of dignity, of mission, of courageous leadership. It literally just finds a space for that to thrive and then create legacy and impact from there. So I can't believe we are almost at our hour. And there are 2 things I want to ask you. The first one is, I know that there are leaders who are doing the best that they can, but they are exhausted, and they're listening to your victory statement, and they have been in this cycle of trying to save something that's broken. How do you actually lead without burning yourself out?
I think that's tough, and I think it's a question many of us struggle with. I do think we have to ask ourselves sometimes very hard questions about how we are resourced personally and professionally. And I hope this is not an unpopular opinion, but there are times that we just have to let go of some things. And that can mean a lot of different things. It can mean letting go of, wanting people to perceive you a certain way. It can be letting go of certain aspects or programs of the work you're doing, even though that you are deeply, deeply passionate about it. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. And the other thing that I will say, and this is going to sound a little counterintuitive compared to where we started, there is absolutely, I come from the corporate world. I worked for Barnes & Noble for a while. I worked for a children's book publisher, Scholastic, for a while. And in those worlds, there's no shame in the publishing industry if two publishers decide to merge to strengthen capacity and operations. Nobody feels horrified and mortified. Oh no, I let all of HarperCollins down. No, that's not it. We have to ask ourselves, if we are not currently sustainable, can we get to sustainability? And if we can get there on our own, that's wonderful. And if we need to take a partner and we need to look at some repositioning to strengthen some of that, then we have to do that. And I started by saying I had to ask myself that question. And I still ask myself that question, because if there is a day that I feel like I am running an expensive club for 16 employees to feel good about what they're doing, I got to stop. That's not what I'm in business to do. If our impact is not where it needs to be, then we need to look at things differently. And that's such a hard thing to say for people who are so passionate and compassionate. But those are sometimes the courageous choices, even if they're not the comfortable ones.
Yes. And none of that, whether you need to ask for help or if you need to let something go, neither one of them means that you are less valuable as a leader.
I think we need to remind folks of that. Because would we think that about someone else? If someone walked into the help center and said to me, I could use some help with this, would I ever look at them as a less valuable or worthy person? If my husband says to me, hey, I could use some help, would I ever think? Of course I wouldn't. So why do we think that? Why do we turn that inward, right? And this isn't, I'm not good enough. That's not on.
You are still a good leader. You are still powerful. And so I always ask my guests to kind of close out the show, because I strongly believe, and it has literally happened to me. I'm out somewhere speaking and someone says, someone sent this, your show to me at just the moment I was getting ready to give up. So I've been in those situations. So I believe that this will land in a leader's hands at a point in time where they're either, I keep going, or I'm just going to quit all of this. I'd love for you to look into the camera and speak to the leader who receives this episode. And I want you to give them an action step for them to take this week to help them stay courageous.
I will ask you, when things feel difficult, when you are concerned that you are not up for the challenge, to remind yourself that nobody else has it all figured out either. There's no one who has every single thing figured out. We're all on this journey together, and find the other folks who are traveling the same path and ask for help, ask for support, ask for a hug. If you need a hug, that's okay. And don't second guess yourself either. I think one of the big challenges that I've seen, especially in women leaders, is the idea that we somehow conflate confidence and competence. I know a lot of folks who are very confident and maybe don't realize their own competencies or lack thereof. Sometimes when we feel nervous and we don't feel confident, it's simply because we understand the importance of the work, the magnitude of the challenge, and give yourself some grace. It may not mean that you're incompetent, unqualified, not ready. It means you're smart enough to understand that the work you're about to embark on is really important. And so trust that. Your action step is to just say, I'm still figuring it out. So are other folks, and I'm willing to ask for help.
So, as we close tonight, I want every leader to listen and remember this. You do not have to feel fully ready to make your next courageous step. What Marissa reminded us of tonight is that leadership is not about waiting for certainty. It's about responding to the moment with vision, adaptability, and courage. Sometimes the systems around us are no longer working. Sometimes the old models need to be rebuilt. And sometimes leadership means making bold decisions while still carrying fear, responsibility, and real life all at the same time. But here's the flip side. Confidence often shows up after you move. So if you've been hesitating, doubting yourself, or waiting for the perfect time, this right here, this is your reminder. Lead anyway, innovate anyway, trust your capacity to grow into what this season requires. Because the future doesn't just need confident leaders. This future, it needs courageous ones. And you are just that one. So we'll see you same time, same place next week, right here on the flip side. I'll see you then.